of the journalists during Tinubu's media chat, his first media chat in 18 months. How would you rate them? Many people are focused on the performance of Tinubu, and depending on who you ask, the answer will vary. I won't focus on that because for me, however Tinubu performed depends on how the journalists performed. So, how would you rate them? Very good, averagely good, very bad? Let's take a look at that. And then we look at this whole stampede, and stampede thing. We hear that the former wife or the ex-wife of Oni of Ife has been taken to court, and there are news or reports coming out now that, okay, they're about to send her to jail. What is the truth behind all of this? And of course, let's not forget that President responded on this matter. Then we talk about the fact that Dele Farotimi has also regained his freedom, and many people are jubilating and celebrating. But really, should we be celebrating yet? And I ask this question not because I feel, okay, perhaps there's a case against Dele Farotimi. For me, both of them during the election periods were supporters of Peter Obi. So whether it is Dele Farotimi that wins or whether it is Afe Babalola that wins, it's not the important thing. And we're missing the point. What is it that is remaining, that is outstanding, that we should be worried about, despite the fact that Dele Farotimi is out on bail, he has regained his freedom? Let's talk about that. And then we'll round it off with the fact that, okay, the tax reform bills, is it good, is it bad, or is it ugly? We heard what Tinubu said about it in his media chat. Practically almost zero. But as Nigerians, let's analyze. Not what the senators tell you, not what politicians tell you. You, as a Nigerian, is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? Let's unpack these issues in a very short time. First, let's start with the issue of the performance of the journalists in Tinubu's media chat. For me, personally, I don't know how you rate them. The performance of the journalists was absolutely woeful, disgusting, and below average. All of them, except for a few like Mokbe of channels, who tried to, spark up things a little, but as it would appear, it's like there were some people behind the scenes who were pulling strings, telling them or trying to put on the brakes. But apart from that, all the others, below average, particularly the guy from TVC, the big guy from TVC. Well, I didn't expect much from that. What do you expect? It's TVC. And from the response of Tinubu, can you guess something? Can you guess that there seemed to be some kind of, and I understand it, some kind of rapport between the guy from TVC and the president himself. But that aside, the performance of all of them were particularly, and my biggest disappointment was Ruben Abati. Big disappointment. The following day, he was on Arise already bragging about how his ancestors of media chats, presidential media chat, how he has interviewed all the presidents since 1999. Oh yes, how he was the image maker for Goodluck Jonathan, even though he didn't do he did a nasty job. If he did such a good job, Jonathan would still be president and he would have won 2015. So bragging about being ancestor about presidential media chat, it was a horrible outing, particularly for Ruben Abati. Come on. If there's a channel that Nigerians still look up to as more or less an opposition channel, it is Arise. And it's because of people like Ruben Abati and, Rufai Hussaini and some other couple of persons. But all of a sudden, during this presidential media chat, and I observe it, anytime Ruben is interviewing a high-profile politician, it's like he packs his brain at home. He forgets all of his repertoire of history and knowledge. He forgets them. A Tinubu was even audacious, put on a bold face to ask which of the ministers is not performing. And a Reuben Abati could not point anyone. He was looking there like a Dundee. Oh, looking truly like an ancestor, because ancestors are old and weak. Looking like a Dundee, could not say anything. What happened to all the questions like, this is a Tinubu that evaded questions about the 460,000 US dollars drugs related forfeiture in the US all through the election cycle, sitting in front of you. Reuben, have you forgotten there was such a case? Couldn't you have raised it? Because it borders about the moral integrity of Nigeria, what we teach our younger ones. You couldn't raise that question. The fact that there was so much discrepancy about his CSU, CSU, Chicago State University degree, where reports have it that it's a female that has that name, and some other documents released show that the Bola Ahmed Tinubu that graduated from CSU was actually a female, and that she had a US, what do you call it now? Social security number. And you and I know that once you have a social security number, it's an indication that you are a citizen of America. And that, with respect to our law, section 141, section 149, simply means that you can't be president. What happened? This is an opportunity for the so-called journalists to raise this question. They didn't raise it. They didn't raise it. The performance of Tinubu in that presidential media chat based on the failure of the journalists. Reuben Abati, king of them, is to blame. That's my own rating. I don't know what your rating is. Let me know. If you think I'm unfairly judging the journalist, give me your own points. Let's move on. Very quickly, the issue of the stampedes. Now we hear that the court in Ibadan has remanded the ex-wife of the Ooni of Ife in prison. Call it correctional services, in prison, because of what happened. Now, based off of what Tinubu himself said, you as a Nigerian, do you think that is fair? Are we trying to punish people who were trying to do good? Although some people argue, and even indeed the president, Tinubu, argued that it is because the people were not organized. And from the way he said it, he was blaming both the recipients, the poor people who came to collect palliative, and those who managed to squeeze out their resources to give out the palliative, that they were not organized. But what he seemed to forget is this. Now, we can agree that that of Naomi, the ex-wife of the Ooni of Ife, was probably a first time. And I doubt that it is a first time. But of course, it's the first time we're hearing about it. The one in Anambra, perhaps it's the first time. Or it's the first time that we're hearing about it. But the one in Lagos, the Holy Trinity Church, Catholic Church in Maitama, they do it every year. They did it last year. We didn't hear of any stampede. So the question we should be asking, why is it that this year there was a stampede? Is it related to the fact that a lot more Nigerians have slipped into the poverty line or below the poverty line? Is it possible that it is because the policies of the current administration, Tinubu, has impoverished Nigerians and made Nigerians so hungry that a lot more people came out in desperation to look for what to eat? Is it possible? If that be the case, should we now be punishing people who decided to take out of their own hard-earned resources, or maybe not so hard-earned, to give to the poor? Should we be punishing them? Yes, lives were lost. Probably we should give warning, but should we punish? Is Naomi really being punished because of the fact that she tried to help the poor? Or because she left the Oni of Ife? Questions and more questions. Let's delve on very quickly to the issue of the release of Dele Farotimi. I've said it before. For me, Dele Farotimi versus Afe Babalola is a distraction because it is a tactic to use to divide and conquer. The supporters of Afe Babalola, the supporters of Dele Farotimi, they are part of a larger group of Nigerians that are the oppressed. Forget the status of Dele Farotimi himself or Afe Babalola himself. I'm talking about their supporters now, because the both of them were supporters of Peter Obi during the 2023 elections. So I see no joy in the two of them going against each other. And I do not think that the book that Dele Farotimi wrote, I may be wrong, correct me, I do not think that the intention of Dele Farotimi writing that book that he wrote was necessarily to pull down the reputation of an Afe Babalola. It was more geared towards exposing the rot in the Nigerian system. That was what it was geared towards. So I didn't think that there was a need for Afe to react the way he reacted. And of course, from what we have heard so far, it is the people who are his supporters that are pushing him to all of these things. It is his supporters. So for me, I see no joy in that. But now that he is out on bail, a lot of Nigerians are rejoicing. They are rejoicing. I'm talking. I'll come and meet you later. A lot of Nigerians are rejoicing that he has regained his freedom. But is that the end of the journey? Is it the end of the journey? Okay, what is the next line of action? What is the next expectations that we should have? Is it that we should now begin to think and say, okay, now Dele Farotimi is going to expose, or now Dele Farotimi is going to go to jail because he won't be able to provide evidence? What should we be looking up to? That's why for me, this is a whole big distraction. Because we, the people of Nigerians, are not benefited by either of the positions. Now, what we should focus on next is the activities of the Nigerian police and the activities of the Nigerian judiciary. For me, this is where the problem is. Dele Farotimi has the right to write books. He has the right to make insinuations based on his experiences and put them in that book. If an Afe Babalola is aggrieved and feels defamed, Afe Babalola, please, and this is important, has a right to file for defamation, whether he goes through the criminal route or the civil case route. That's not important. Based off of Nigerian law today, if I feel defamed, I have two choices, either to file a civil suit or go the defamation as a criminal defamation route based off of our laws. Now, the fact that Afe Babalola went to write a petition pursuing the criminal defamation route, it's not bad in itself. Where the problem is the consequential actions of the Nigerian police and of the Nigerian judiciary. That Dele Farotimi, that Afe Babalola, reported the case to the police. Did it warrant the way and manner the police went about arresting Dele Farotimi? Did it? Did it? That is where the problem is. The brutality of the police. Now, don't get me wrong. There are fine police officers, and I do know some of them. Fine police officer, even though the percentage keeps dwindling. Very, very small percentage. But there are fine police officers. But there are a good number of police officers that are just, at the least, let's not even call them corrupt. At the least, they are overzealous. Particularly when you have a high-profile person come to make complaint. They want to please such high persons, even not minding that they are going beyond their powers as provided by the law and by the Constitution. This is what the problem is. Was that an arrest? That was an abduction. So even if Dele Farotimi has regained his freedom now, we shouldn't just rejoice yet. We must make sure that those police officers that did what they did, carrying out what appears on the face of it to be an unlawful arrest, they must be made to pay. Petitions should be written to the CRU unit of the Nigerian police. Petitions should be written to the Police Service Commission, and lawsuits should be filed in court to bring those police officers to book, so that we can stop it can serve as deterrence for the Nigerian police. Because if we don't, we're already seeing what has happened with this other lady influencer with King. We're seeing what has happened. The police has a tendency to be overzealous, and this is where our attention should be. The Inspector General of Police has come to say that police should not be searching students' or youth's phones or carrying out arbitrary arrests. Now, the question is, what is an arbitrary arrest? We'll delve into that in a separate video. What is an arbitrary arrest and what is an unlawful arrest? But right now, we're not focusing on it. In arresting King, the TikTok influencer, the police clearly, from what we have seen and heard about how he was arrested or abducted, as some people would like to put it, the police went against the directive of the Inspector General of Police. They went against it. So such police officers must now be brought to book. A complaint should be filed. We hear that human rights lawyer in Nihebe, Effiong, is it Effiong or Ubong, has intervened in the case, according to what we heard, what Shuore posted. And so his release is probably imminent if it has not already happened. We hear that has happened. But what we should focus on is that we must now make sure that we file complaint at the CRU unit of the Nigerian police, file complaint to the Police Service Commission, and file a suit against the Nigerian police for their actions, unlawful arrest. This is where the problem is. If we can do this and bring those errant police officers to check, to book, we'll be doing the Nigerian citizens and even the good police officers, we'll be doing them a lot of favor. This is where the focus is. Because if we just shout, shout, and say, free King, free Dele Farotimi, they'll free Dele Farotimi, other people will still fall victim unless we take this action. Tax reform bill. Before we go to tax reform bill, I want to say this. For me, the whole essence of the media chat was to inform Nigerians, to let them see what is going on in the country. They asked the president about does he have any regrets about his policies? And he said he doesn't, which shows his disconnect with the Nigerian people. His disconnect. Earlier, I was talking about how disappointed I was at the performance of the journalists, right? With the exception of Mokpe. At least I gave her some small above average performance, but the rest below average. In fact, outright fail for the BTO guy. Outright fail. But when he was asked about his regret, he said none, which means that the sufferings that Nigerians are going through doesn't matter. Now, one thing we should focus on is the fact that the president does not care. His handlers do not care about your suffering, about my suffering. At least it will appear as such. So what does that tell you? All this focus on let's expose. Yes, we can expose, but what is the effect of the exposure? What benefits are we getting from it? What benefits? The benefits are almost zero. So, way forward, we need to come to a realization, to know, to wake up to this fact that these people that are in charge of Nigeria now, they cannot bring about the changed Nigeria that we're talking or yearning or crying or asking for. They can't. So we must engage to bring in new set of leaders. That task may look as if it's impossible, if not extremely difficult. Or is it the other way around? It may look as if it's extremely difficult, if not impossible. but it is doable. All we need is to form a political party with the right ideologies and checks and balances embedded in its constitution. Right ideologies. Once we have that, credible people will have opportunity to participate. The political terrain will be thrown open. A level playing field will be created. Because right now, ask yourself, is the political terrain open or has it been closed to favor only the money bags? Ask yourself that question. So this is what we need to do. All the complaining and the exposure and all of that. I mean, a Reuben Abati was there. The CIA released official documents to court. Official documents that they cannot release information about Tinubu because he is their agent, or sorry, their asset. And a Reuben Abati could not interrogate Tinubu sitting in front of him on this. What do you know? This is why all this exposure thing, for me, waste of time. They may help, maybe 3 or 4%. The remaining 90+ percentage action that we need to take is this solving the leadership problem, and then the other is to solve the followership problem. And the two of them, the two solutions, we have the two solutions for them. Follow us and let us solve this country.